Do you ever feel like you're trapped inside a linguistic cage? You've got all these complex thoughts, these deep opinions, but when you open your mouth, out comes, "I think this is good," or "I am very tired."
It's the intermediate plateau. It's frustrating because people understand you, but they don't really hear you. You lack that edge, that nuance that makes a native speaker sound, well, native.
Today, we're breaking that cage. We're going to have a completely natural conversation, but there's a catch. We've got a buzzer.
Oh, I'm ready. If either of us uses a lazy word, a basic textbook phrase, or makes a common mistake, buzzer! We'll stop, tear the sentence apart, and show you exactly how to upgrade it to C1 level English.
We designed this for you to listen, really focus on the rhythm and the flow of the language. But hey, if you want to follow along with the text, feel free to turn on the subtitles.
All right, Alex, let's see if you can actually survive 10 minutes without sounding like a level 1 textbook.
Oh, it's on. Let's get into it. All right, Emma, let's see how long I can last. So, last night I decided to actually be productive and attend this high-level networking mixer downtown. It was for tech entrepreneurs, and honestly, I was feeling pretty confident. I'd spent the whole afternoon polishing my pitch and making sure my suit was crisp. I arrived at the venue, which was this incredibly big building right on the waterfront.
Oh, stop! Not even 30 seconds in and you give me big? Alex, big is what a 5-year-old says about an elephant. You're describing prime real estate on the waterfront. You're trying to sound like a C1 professional.
Okay, fair point. It wasn't just big. It was, it was an imposing monolithic structure. Or even better, a vast, sprawling complex. It felt monumental.
Better. Imposing gives it character. Big gives it nothing. Carry on.
Right, so I walked into the foyer and the interior was just as impressive. The ceilings were high and the lighting was very nice.
Nice? Seriously? Are we decorating a nursery or attending a gala?
All right. The lighting was atmospheric and sophisticated. It had this subdued, elegant glow that really set the mood. Anyway, I made my way to the bar to get a drink. Nothing heavy, just a sparkling water, and I started scanning the room for someone influential to talk to. I saw this woman standing near the stage. She looked very important.
Important? Alex, you sound like you're reading a textbook for beginners. Give me some nuance. How did she look?
She had a commanding presence. She looked distinguished, like she was the pivotal figure in the room. You could tell she was someone of considerable influence.
Now we're talking. Commanding presence creates a much clearer image than just important. Go ahead.
So I approached her. I was nervous, but I tried to hide it. I introduced myself and we started talking. I told her about my startup and she seemed interested.
Interested. The most overused word in the English language.
She seemed intrigued. No, even better, she appeared captivated by the concept. She was asking good questions.
You're making this too easy for me. Good questions?
Fine. She was asking insightful and thought-provoking questions. She was probing into the logistics of our scalability. I thought I was doing great. I was on a roll. But then I tried to make a joke to lighten the mood, and it was a bad idea.
Bad. My ears are bleeding.
It was a disastrous move, a total blunder. It was ill-advised and, frankly, cringeworthy. The joke completely bombed. She just stared at me for a second, and the silence was so long.
Alex. Long?
The silence was interminable. It was excruciating. It felt like time had literally ground to a halt. I felt my face getting hot, and I knew I had to leave.
Leave? You didn't just leave.
I had to make a hasty retreat. I needed to extricate myself from the situation as quickly as possible. I mumbled something about seeing an old colleague across the room and just bolted. I spent the next 20 minutes hiding in the bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror and wondering where it all went wrong. I felt so sad about the whole thing.
Sad. Don't do that to yourself. Give it some C1 weight.
I felt dejected. I was utterly disheartened and a bit mortified. I really thought I had a chance to make a connection there, but I blew it because I couldn't keep my nerves under control. Eventually, I just slipped out the side exit and walked home in the rain. It was a very unpleasant walk.
Unpleasant. Last one, make it count.
It was a somber, miserable trek. I felt forlorn as I walked through the city. But hey, at least I learnt my lesson. No more jokes at networking events until I've had at least one successful conversation.
And hopefully, no more B1 adjectives. You survived. Barely.
That was harder than I thought. Your finger is way too quick on that buzzer.
Okay, Alex. Since you shared your networking disaster, I have to tell you about my trip to the Alps last month. I was so burnt out from work that I decided to book this secluded cabin. I just wanted some peace and quiet. I took the train, and when I arrived at the village, the view of the mountains was really good.
Oh, how the tables have turned. Good, Emma. You're in the majestic Alps, surrounded by snow-capped peaks, and all you can say is good? That's a B1 crime if I ever heard one.
Fine, I deserved that. The view wasn't just good, it was breathtaking. It was sublime. The mountains were jagged and formidable, towering over the valley in a way that made me feel completely insignificant. Is that C1 enough for you?
Much better. Sublime is a top-tier choice. Carry on.
Anyway, I had to hike from the station to the cabin. I thought it was a short walk, but it turned out to be a 3-hour climb. And of course, the weather was very hot.
Hot? You're describing a strenuous mountain hike, and you use the word hot? Give me the intensity.
Okay, it was scorching. The heat was stifling, and the sun was relentless. I was absolutely drenched in sweat by the time I reached the front door. I was so tired.
Tired. Boring. You've just hiked for 3 hours in the heat with luggage. You're past tired.
You're right. I was exhausted. No, I was utterly spent. I felt completely drained of all energy. I just wanted to drop my bags and collapse. But when I finally got the key under the mat and opened the door, I realized the cabin was very small.
Small? Did you book a dollhouse?
It felt like it. It was cramped and claustrophobic. It was a minuscule space that barely had room for a bed. And the smell? It was bad.
Bad. Come on, Emma. Describe the scent. Give the listeners something to work with.
It was putrid. It had this musty, stagnant odor, like it hadn't been aired out in decades. I was starting to feel angry that I'd paid so much money for this place.
Angry.
I was fuming. I was incensed. I felt like I'd been swindled. I immediately tried to call the owner, but there was no cell service. None. I was completely alone.
Alone?
I was isolated. I was in a state of total seclusion, which sounded great in the brochure, but in reality, it was nerve-wracking. I spent the whole night listening to strange noises outside. Every time a branch snapped, I got scared.
Scared. Like a little kid.
I was apprehensive. Actually, I was terrified. I was on edge the entire night, convinced that a bear was about to break through the door. When the sun finally came up, I decided to leave. I packed my bags and started the hike back down. It was a very fast trip.
Fast.
It was a brief and fleeting stay. I practically ran down that mountain. By the time I got back to the city, I was so happy to see civilization again.
Happy.
I was elated. I was overjoyed to see a Starbucks and a paved road. It was the most boring vacation I've ever had.
Wait, boring? If you were terrified and fuming, it wasn't boring.
You're right, it wasn't boring. It was eventful, but in the worst possible way. It was a lackluster attempt at a getaway that turned into a harrowing experience. How's that?
Brilliant. You really turned it around at the end there. I felt your pain through your vocabulary. You know, Emma, I've been thinking a lot lately about how much we rely on technology, specifically AI. I had this massive report due last week. It was one of those deep dive analytical pieces on market trends for the next decade. I was feeling the pressure, the deadline was looming, and I thought, why not let a specialized AI tool handle the heavy lifting for the data synthesis? I figured it would be easy.
Sorry, Alex. I had to. Easy. It's such a flat word for someone who's supposed to be navigating high-level tech solutions.
You're right. It's a bit simplistic. I thought the process would be straightforward or even seamless. I expected it to be effortless given the sophistication of the software. Anyway, I fed all my raw data into this program, spreadsheets, PDFs, interview transcripts, and asked it to generate a comprehensive summary with citations. At first glance, the output was incredible. It looked polished, professional, and the vocabulary it used was actually quite impressive. I was so convinced by the quality that I didn't do a thorough check. I had this idea that the machine was infallible.
Idea? Come on, Alex, you're talking about a mental framework here. Give me a C1 word.
Fair enough. I was under the notion, or perhaps the misconception, that the machine was infallible. I harbored this assumption that the algorithms were foolproof. So, I attached the summary to my main report and sent it off to the board of directors. I felt a huge weight off my shoulders. I actually went out for a long lunch, feeling quite smug about my efficiency. But then, about 2 hours later, I got an email from our lead analyst. He just wrote, "Alex, we need to talk. Now." When I got back to the office, he pointed out that the AI hadn't just summarized the data. It had completely made up 3 major market studies. It hallucinated entire sets of statistics to support its conclusion. It was a huge problem.
Problem is a bit of an understatement for a career-threatening mistake, don't you think?
Definitely. It was a major complication, a real quagmire. Honestly, it was a fiasco. I realized that the AI had been so eager to provide a coherent narrative that it sacrificed factual accuracy for the sake of flow. I had to spend the entire night, and I mean the entire night, cross-referencing every single sentence against the original sources to purge the fabrications. It was a hard night of work, let me tell you.
Hard? You can do better than that after a night like that.
It was grueling. It was a laborious, painstaking process. I felt like a forensic accountant trying to solve a crime. By 5 a.m., I had a clean version, but my eyes were burning and I'd consumed way too much caffeine. I sent the corrected version with a very humble apology, explaining that there had been a technical glitch in the final synthesis. Luckily, the board was understanding, but it really changed the way I look at these tools. I think we're getting to a point where we trust the voice of the machine more than the actual facts.
Think. It's so passive. Give me your professional stance.
I maintain that we're reaching a dangerous level of over-reliance. I speculate that we might lose our critical thinking skills if we don't start questioning the outputs more rigorously. I now contend that AI should be a co-pilot, not the captain. It was a lesson in humility for sure. I learned that no matter how advanced the software is, there's no substitute for human oversight and meticulous fact-checking.
Wow, that sounds like a close call. I'm glad you caught it before it went to the clients. But you're right, that veneer of authority that AI has can be so deceptive. You hear a confident tone and you just assume it's telling the truth.
Exactly. It's articulate, it's grammatically perfect, but it can be completely hollow. It's a reminder that being C1 isn't just about using big words. It's about the precision of the thought behind them, which, ironically, is exactly what the AI lacked.
Well said. And hey, you survived that round with much fewer buzzers. Maybe you're finally starting to think in C1.
Don't get ahead of yourself. I'm just being more careful now.
You know, Alex, speaking of AI and efficiency, it reminds me of when I transitioned into my current role as a project lead. Before that, I was just part of the team, doing my tasks and going home. But suddenly, I was responsible for a team of 12. On my first day, I sat down at my new desk, and the feeling was just so big.
Hold on, Emma. Let's break that down for the listeners. You said the feeling was big. Now, we all know what big means, but it's a lazy adjective because it doesn't describe the nature of the emotion. When you're stepping into a major life change, big is too vague. To sound more C1, you should use words like overwhelming, monumental, or profound. These words tell us that the weight of the situation was heavy on your mind.
That makes total sense. Overwhelming definitely fits better because I felt like I couldn't breathe for a second. So I was in this overwhelming situation and I looked at my to-do list. It was full of high-stakes decisions. I had to meet with the stakeholders and I was really scared they'd realize I didn't know what I was doing.
Scared. Again, a very common B1 word. In a professional context, if you say you're scared, it can sound a bit childish. At a C1 level, we want to describe the flavor of that fear. If it's about the future, use apprehensive. If you feel small compared to the people around you, use intimidated. Or, if you're worried about your reputation, say you felt vulnerable. It shows a much deeper self-awareness.
Right. I felt incredibly intimidated by their experience. I was sitting in this boardroom, surrounded by people who had been in the industry for 20 years. When it was my turn to speak, I tried to tell them my plan for the next quarter.
Tell. It's the most basic verb for communication. But in a leadership role, you don't just tell people things. You articulate a vision, you convey a strategy, or you present a proposal. Using articulate suggests that you are being clear, professional, and persuasive. It's a power verb.
Got it. So I struggled to articulate my strategy clearly. My voice was slightly shaky and I could feel my heart racing. I was worried that my lack of experience would be clear to everyone in the room.
Clear. It's fine, but it's a bit flat. If you want to sound more sophisticated, use evident, apparent, or conspicuous. If something is conspicuous, it means it stands out in a way that's hard to ignore. It adds a layer of intensity to your description.
I feared my inexperience would be painfully evident. But then, something strange happened. One of the senior directors leaned forward and said he actually liked my approach.
Liked. We use this for everything from social media to pizza. But in a professional review, you want words that suggest value. Try commended, endorsed, or appreciated. If he endorsed your approach, it means he gave it his official support. That's a much stronger image.
He endorsed my approach. He said it was a refreshing perspective and that the company needed to change its traditional methods.
Change. It's the ultimate safe word. But for C1, we have so many better options depending on the type of change. If you're making it better, use optimize. If you're starting from scratch, use revolutionize. If you're just shifting slightly, use pivot. In this case, it sounds like you wanted to modernize or overhaul the system.
Exactly. He wanted to overhaul the entire workflow. That one comment changed everything for me. My imposter syndrome didn't disappear overnight, but it became small.
You almost got away with it. Small?
Okay. It became negligible, or it subsided. It was no longer a dominant force in my mind. I realized that everyone is just figuring it out as they go, even the people at the top.
Perfect. Negligible is a fantastic C1 word. It means something is so small it's not even worth worrying about. And that's a huge shift from feeling overwhelmed.
I think that day taught me that the way we talk about our challenges actually changes how we feel about them. If I keep saying I'm scared, I stay scared. But if I say that I'm apprehensive, it sounds like something I can work with.
Spot on. Precision in language leads to precision in thought. You're sounding like a leader already, Emma.
Thanks, Alex. I guess I'll keep you around for the vocabulary upgrades after all.
You know, Emma, looking back at my first year living in London, it was like being caught in a whirlwind. I came from a much smaller town where life had a certain rhythm. You knew your neighbours, you walked to the local shop, and time seemed to stretch out. But the city? The city is a different beast entirely. Everyone is chasing something. I fell into this trap of toxic productivity almost immediately. I felt like if I wasn't working, networking, or learning a new skill every waking second, I was failing. My schedule was just so busy.
Okay, Alex, let's pause there. Busy. It's probably the most overused word in the English language when we talk about work. If you're a B1 speaker, busy is your go-to. But at a C1 level, we need to describe the nature of that schedule. If it's chaotic and fast-paced, use hectic. If you have way too much to do and feel like you're drowning, use overloaded or swamped. If your schedule is so full that there's no room for anything else, call it jam-packed. Busy is just a fact. Hectic is a feeling.
Hectic definitely captures the chaos better. My life became incredibly hectic. I was waking up at 5 a.m. to answer emails, then commuting for an hour on a train that was always crowded.
Crowded. Again, it's very literal. It just means there are many people. But to sound more articulate, you could use congested, which implies that the movement is blocked, like a nose or a highway. Or, if you want to be more descriptive, you could say the train was teeming with commuters or thronged with people. It paints a much more vivid picture of that uncomfortable urban density.
It was congested beyond belief. Every morning was a battle for personal space. And the pressure at the office was relentless. My boss was a hustle culture devotee. He expected us to be on 24/7. I started to notice that my mental health was getting bad.
Bad is the ultimate placeholder word. It doesn't tell us anything specific. In a C1 conversation, you want to describe the type of decline. Was it a deterioration of your mental health? Were you experiencing burnout? Or maybe a sense of malaise, that general feeling of discomfort and unease? Using a word like deteriorating shows a process of getting worse over time, which is much more precise than just bad.
My mental state was definitely deteriorating. I was losing my ability to focus. I was irritable, and I couldn't enjoy my weekends because I was constantly dreading Monday morning. I reached a point where I realized that this dream life in the city was actually a nightmare in disguise. I had to make a choice, either keep pushing until I completely broke, or find a way to decouple my self-worth from my output. It wasn't an easy decision.
Last one. Easy. Again, very safe. Try using straightforward if you mean the logic was simple, or trivial if the choice was unimportant. But since this was a major life decision, you could say it wasn't a walk in the park, or it wasn't a binary choice, or simply, it was an agonizing decision. That really conveys the struggle you went through.
It certainly wasn't a straightforward decision because I had worked so hard to get that job. But eventually, I started setting boundaries. I stopped checking emails after 7 p.m. I started going to a small park near my flat, not to jog or listen to a podcast, but just to sit, to exist without a purpose. At first, it felt unproductive, and that made me anxious. But slowly, that anxiety began to subside. I realized that the city only owns you if you let it. I'm still in London, and it's still hectic, but I'm no longer part of the hustle. I've reclaimed my time.
That's a powerful realization, Alex. It's funny how we use basic language like busy or bad to hide the complexity of what we're actually going through. Once you start using words like hectic or deteriorating, you're forced to confront the reality of the situation.
Exactly. Precision in language leads to a better understanding of your own life. I stopped being busy and started being deliberate. And that made all the difference.
Deliberate. Now that is a perfect C1 word to end on.
Well, Emma, we made it. Dozens of buzzers and honestly, a lot of self-reflection. I didn't realize how often I lean on those safety net words like big, bad, or problem until you were there ready to pounce on me.
It was a workout for me too, Alex. Keeping my ears open for those B1 placeholders is actually quite exhausting. But you know what I noticed? As the parts went on, you started to self-correct before I even hit the buzzer. That's the real goal of this whole process, developing that internal C1 ear.
Exactly. It's about moving away from survival English and towards expressive English. When we looked back at part 1, when I was talking about that networking event, I said the building was big. But once we upgraded it to imposing or monumental, the whole story changed. It wasn't just a place anymore. It had a vibe. It had weight.
That's the key takeaway for everyone listening. Level B1 is functional. It gets the information across. But level C1 is atmospheric. When I talked about my mountain hike, swapping hot for scorching or stifling didn't just tell you the temperature, it told you how I felt. It invited the listener into my physical experience.
And then there were the verbs. That was a big one for me. When you were talking about your promotion, we looked at the word tell, moving to articulate, convey, or endorse. Those aren't just smarter words, they're more professional. They change the way people perceive your authority. If you tell a plan, you're a messenger. If you articulate a strategy, you're a leader.
Spot on. We talked about problems becoming impediments or stumbling blocks. I think that was my favorite lesson. A problem is something you have to fix. An impediment is something you have to overcome. The language we use actually defines our relationship with our struggles.
You know, looking at the volume of text we've gone through today, I hope the listeners realize that C1 isn't about memorizing a dictionary. It's about precision. We used words like plethora instead of many, defunct instead of broken, and expeditiously instead of fast. Each of those choices was deliberate.
And it's okay to be B1 sometimes. We all are when we're tired or distracted. The point of this video wasn't to shame anyone for using basic English. It was to show you the doors that open when you choose to be more specific. When you move from scared to apprehensive, or from happy to gratified, you're giving your personality more room to breathe in a foreign language.
We really hope this format helped you hear the difference. Language learning shouldn't be a dry academic exercise. It's a living, breathing conversation. If you've been listening closely, you've just absorbed hundreds of high-level collocations and idioms in their natural habitat.
We want to hear from you. Which of these upgrades resonated the most? Was it the professional verbs or the descriptive adjectives? Leave a comment and try to use one of the C1 words we discussed today. We'll be reading them.
And remember, the next time you're about to say something is good, pause for a second. Is it vibrant? Is it sublime? Is it extraordinary? Challenge yourself to find that precise word.
Keep pushing through that plateau. It's a long journey, but the view from the top is breathtaking.
Thanks for sticking with us through all 8 parts. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone. Keep upgrading.